Welcome to the Multidose Podcast, your guide to authenticity, hosted by Multazim Zia. Brought to you by the Multipath. This podcast is more than just insights, it's your dose of authenticity. Join us as experts, celebrities, influencers, and real people share their authentic knowledge like never before. From every episode, you can expect to learn something new and maybe explore a new perspective on your own life. To support our podcast, consider donating to our Patreon and share the love on social media. Every like, follow, comment, share, and penny counts. Find us on all streaming platforms and connect with us on our social media at The Multipath and at Multazim Zia. Your authenticity is just one dose away.
So guys, today we have Monica. Now, Monica and I have already had a brief introduction and it was a very lovely conversation. So I'm excited to see what we have on this podcast episode today, what comes out of it. So I'm going to let her do the introduction herself and then we'll take the conversation from there.
Lovely, thank you. So I'm Monica Ghai and I am a legal director specialising in family law. I work at a law firm called Shakespeare Martineau based in Birmingham, and I have been working in family law probably for about 15 years now. And I specialise in all areas of family law, so divorce, advising people on financial matters arising out of separation, disputes about children, domestic abuse, and also prenuptial agreements and cohabitation agreements as well, unmarried people as well, and any disputes that arise out of that.
You've obviously mentioned you're a legal director. I also am aware, and I don't know if you touched upon there, but I'm also aware you do more than the legal work, of course, and that's
Yeah.
something we will come on to. But now that we're speaking about you being a legal director and you're working in family law, tell me, and let's go straight into the complicated questions and topics. Tell me about the clientele you work with, what's their background like, why it's important that you, as I would say, Asian woman, are working with those clientele, and how does it make a difference to their life?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say, the clients that I've worked with have certainly changed over the years. Um, in sort of probably the last 5 years, I would say most of my clients tend to be um, high net worth individuals, um, so professionals or business owners, or they tend to be the spouses of one of those individuals. So it tends to be a lot of high net worth cases. So usually where there's multiple properties, often properties abroad, usually sort of multi-million pound asset pot.
Mm.
So th those tend to be my clients. I represent both men and women. Um, but I would say, being an Asian woman myself, naturally, I do get a lot of other Asian women seeking to instruct me, which tends to be just because, they feel comfortable that there's a level of understanding there about the cultural side as well of what they're going through. So, a lot of my clients are from a South Asian background.
Coming back onto this topic, because again, we touched upon this, um, and this is something that I've actually advocated for quite a lot on all of my episodes that I've done for season two. I think sometimes in the legal world, people, and actually just in general, people are quite ambiguous. The idea of having a barrister or a solicitor or representative of colour and why that actually makes a difference to clients. Now, obviously, from your perspective, you'll know this firsthand. So I've been on the other end of this where I've dealt with barristers and solicitors that are not the
Yeah,
same colour, and
yeah,
I noticed the difference of them not understanding
yeah,
cultural norms or traditional norms. Sometimes looking at you a bit weirdly and oddly about why you're saying certain things or why certain things happen in these cultures. So
yeah,
how important is it, and how why is it so important to even have those conversations and have
yeah.
those representations?
I think in an area like family law, it's very, very personal, okay? And, you know, people are often going through one of the worst times in their lives, right? So, number one thing is that people need to feel comfortable with the lawyer that's representing them because,
Mm.
the lawyer and that client are going to have a very close relationship. You're going to know a lot of intimate details about what has happened in that person's life, what they've been through, what they're currently going through. So, they need to feel comfortable. And I think what I've found in my experiences, I think having that cultural understanding just really helps with that comfort and that trust. So, for example, with Asian women, you know, if they say to me that they lived with their in-laws after marriage, they don't need to explain to me why they did that, or have to give explain why that was a
Mm.
normal thing that happened because I get it, I understand that. Whereas people from not the same background who maybe haven't had much experience with the Asian culture may not understand that. And I'm by no means saying that you have to be Asian to represent other Asian people at all. It's
Yeah,
about having the understanding of what happens. And similarly, things such as, gold is such a huge
yeah.
thing that is gifted on marriage. And often in Asian divorces, I see lots of disputes about gold and who gave what and
Mm.
how they're going to divide it. And again, I understand why that's important because for Asian families, it's about so much more than just an item of jewelry. There's like a huge sentiment
Yeah.
that, is attached to these items, and sometimes they're passed down, through family generations. So it's about having that understanding of, those cultural norms. And,
Mm.
you can read all the textbooks you want and all the law that you want, but there's just some things that just can't be taught, that you just learn through
Yeah.
experiences, and as I said, which are cultural things that are
Mm.
there.
Yeah, and to be fair, gold is a good one and something I want to add into that. I think the gold, I think sometimes people miss the idea of gold is not just monetary value. Sometimes it provides, obviously, to be fair, it's a combination of things, security, but I think one of the main parts is it's the legacy, isn't it? It's the family legacy, the woman's legacy. Um, a tricky question, and I'm going to ask it anyway. And I know I'm not actually preempted you with this question, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's because you mentioned just then you don't actually have to be Asian to represent obviously an Asian
Yeah.
client, etc. And but how far, how progressed do you think views have become in terms of non-Asian representatives at knowing and understanding the Asian culture or culture and any other culture, especially South Asian culture, considering that we're both
Mm.
South Asians, for
Yeah.
example. So how progressed and advanced do you think that is? Because personally, I don't think it's anywhere near where it should be at the stage. And I've witnessed that firsthand. I've witnessed it
Yeah.
through clients' experiences, even barristers and judges' experiences that I've had conversations with. They still
Yeah.
don't understand it and have admitted it. So where do you stand on that?
I think it really depends on which lawyer you instruct, and sometimes, where you are in the country, I hate to
Mm,
say. I mean, um, I'm from South Yorkshire, as I said originally, and when I first qualified, I practiced up north, and now I'm
mm,
in the Midlands. And I have found being in the Midlands, or when I've had cases in London,
mm.
perhaps because there's a bigger population, there is a larger Asian community there, perhaps it is more known,
Yeah.
and the lawyers and the judges that are there do have more of an awareness, whereas maybe in the northern parts of the country they don't. So I think it really varies, and I think all I can sort of say in terms of advice to people is if that's something that's important to you and you feel that you need to have that, and your case has got those cultural aspects, it's just to go and make sure that you shop around and have initial meetings with lawyers and see who you feel
Mm,
comfortable with, see where you feel most aligned,
mm.
because that's so important to have that.
In your experience, you said just then, having initial conversations. Now, again, you mentioned this, especially when people are going through very tumultuous, sometimes quite contentious and very emotionally charged issues in family law, which, let's be honest, 99% of the cases are, right? Nothing is very simple in
Yeah,
family law.
that's right.
What kind of questions or what type of things are you looking for? Other than obviously the sense of connection with your representative, what kind of questions should you be asking? What kind of things should you be looking for from your representatives to understand if they truly do fit with you? Because I'll be honest, lawyers by nature are good at talking and convincing clients. So
Yeah,
how do you
yeah,
know where you sit correctly without then later on having to change and deviate with your
yeah.
representatives?
That's a good question. Do you know what? I think listening is really important.
Mm,
And, my approach is always one of on the initial appointment with a client, I let them do most of the talking because I feel like, sometimes it's a really big step for them to even come and see
Mm,
you in the first place. Sometimes they may have really built up to it. They might have cancelled a few times and they may have really, delayed having that conversation. It's a bit like going to the doctor in a way when
mm,
you've got a problem and you know it's there, it's the back of your mind. You keep thinking, I must go and get that checked out.
yeah.
Oh, I really don't want to. Similar to that. So, I always let them lead and let them sort of just tell me what they want to tell me. And I think it's important to have a lawyer that listens
Mm,
um, and gives you that space to say what you want to say without constantly jumping in
yeah.
and, bamboozling you straight away with legal jargon, which is
Yeah.
my pet hates as well.
Mm,
And again, similar to the medical field, if something's wrong with you, you've got a problem,
mm,
you don't want to be bamboozled with jargon and all
yeah.
that sort of stuff. You just want to know, how are you going to make me better?
Mm,
How long is it going to take? What do I need to do? And it's not too dissimilar with us.
mm,
People just want to have that knowledge and understanding of what the process looks like, what it's going to cost them, um,
mm,
what it's going to mean for them. And, then they can go away and make an informed decision about what
yeah.
they want to do. And that's the other part of it as well, is making sure that, a lawyer is not pressurizing you to take a particular step. We are there to advise people and tell them the pros and cons of every route and what their options are. We can
Mm,
only advise, but we can't live people's lives for them.
yeah.
People have got to, make that choice themselves.
Yeah, which is a very true point actually. And in all honesty, I probably have to advocate for the opposite side. Very much a person that likes knowing every single in and out before I make a decision. So I'm like, tell me all the
Yeah.
legal jargon if it's a legal thing, if it's a healthcare thing. I'm like, tell me the anatomy, the physiology,
Yeah.
obviously. Again, and also in my defense, obviously, like physio by background, law masters. So I guess that's just intrigue for me.
Yeah,
Um,
so of course you're going to want jargon.
yeah, which is fair enough. Which is fair
Yeah.
enough. But I know very much my family are the same. So my sister's the same. She'll want to know every single keyword, every single thing as well. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely get it. It's the case of, especially for the first meetings, you need a simplified approach. You're probably so overwhelmed with everything going on in the first place. You need a simplified approach saying step one, step two, step three, and these are the options we can go through.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I find most of the time, people may not necessarily take in all those
Mm,
details on the first meeting anyway.
yeah.
So it's really sort of an overview, and then we sort of drill down into the detail.
Yeah. Like in terms of going through whilst we're on the legal world, and we'll move on off from this just a short moment. But whilst we're on the legal world, anyway, when you do have clients, you personally or just more generally, when you do have clients that are coming in very overwhelmed, and this is something I've always thought about, and I'm not sure actually there's a lot of training in this in the legal world.
Yeah.
A lot of them are very overloaded with the sensory nerves, just physically, mentally, emotionally overloaded and overwhelmed. And something I've always thought, as a physio, it makes sense to me because I can handle those situations. I've been trained to. Now, when it comes to me giving, for example, advice, and when it comes to a legal perspective, it's very simple. I can handle these things because I've learned it. It seems like a bit of a disadvantage that lawyers don't actually learn that side of stuff a lot of times. They learn very much, especially when you are studying, um, very much A, B, C, D, like I said, textbook
Yeah.
stuff. And I don't think a lot of people come out of uni, when they, and it's a very traditional approach, isn't it? I know things have changed slightly, but you go to college,
Yeah.
go to university, do law, bachelor's, then you do masters potentially, then you
Yeah.
qualify, then you
Yeah.
get your training contract. It's pretty much as in a step-by-step process. And a lot of times I don't think even training contracts teach you how to handle emotional clients. Um, how would you, or what advice would you give to people in terms of learning those skill sets and
Yeah.
how to actually handle it? If you have any actual tips and tricks right now where you think actually these are fundamental things I would do with somebody if they came very emotionally charged, very emotional, very uncontrollable, how would you handle it?
I think, firstly, I think it's about having as much contact with clients or potential clients as possible.
Mm,
As much as you can give yourself exposure to as many different people from different backgrounds, different issues as possible.
Mm,
That is really, really helpful. When I was a trainee, I used to do the free advice clinics at, the
mm,
Citizens Advice Bureau and all those sorts of things. And, you come across people from all walks of life. And I
mm,
think that's really helpful because then you learn very quickly, um, your communication skills and how to
yes.
talk to people. Um, I think it's about if somebody does come in and they are in that state, I think it's just, you know, giving them the sort of time and space, to try and calm down and let them
Mm,
lead it to what they're comfortable with. I think it's important to learn how your client wants to communicate as
mm,
well. So, sometimes I've got clients that'll say to me, by the way, I'm dyslexic, so
yeah.
um, I really struggle with reading letters or documents or emails. Or, I've had a few clients recently that said, I've got ADHD, so if I am reacting in this way, it's because of this. And so it's really important that we recognize that. And, ultimately that we're there for the client.
Mm,
We are there to make sure that they get the advice from us. So it's part of our duty to adapt
mm,
our communication with them accordingly. And you're right, it's not something that you learn
yeah.
um, at university. It's something that you pick up through experience and on the job, and you say, okay, how would you like to do this? What would you
Mm,
prefer? I have a lot of clients that, will say that from the outset, look, I'm going to send you this email and, or I'm going to send you this document. It's got a lot in it, but don't stress about it. Let's have a call or let's have a meeting and let's go through it.
nice. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got one client at the moment that needs to complete some financial disclosure, and it's quite a lengthy document. And he said to me, I can't do it. If you send
Mm,
it me by email, it's just not something that I can deal with. And he said, can I come in and have a meeting with you and you sit down with me and we go through it? So that's what we're going to do.
nice.
So it's recognizing that people have got different communication styles. People are going through different things at different times, and just adapting, always being
Mm.
adaptive to what is going on
Yeah,
with that
do you know,
person.
that's actually really, really good steps to be honest. Something I actually do with my clients and do with my friends to be fair. And I don't know if it's annoying or not, but I do with my friends a lot. Like before they actually, even my friends, before they even speak to me about something, they say, look, we need to speak to you about something, something's bothering us, or we've got this issue. The first thing I say to them is, look, do you want advice? Do you want me to listen first, or do you want me to just sit there
Yeah,
and just comfort you about stuff? You tell me what version of me you need, and then I'll give you that
yeah,
version. And it works very similar with my clients actually, physio or just people that just need
yeah,
advice in
yeah,
general. It's pretty much as in, you tell me what you need right now, and I
yeah,
will, if you want to know the full history behind stuff, I'll give you that. If you want me just
yeah,
to give you the reassurance, I'll give you that from what I can, obviously, uh, in the correct way. Um,
yeah,
but I love the idea that you mentioned, and this is something that I think everybody needs to acknowledge. It's the fact that you just sometimes need to sit down and say to the clients, okay, let's just speak about this face to face. If we need to, or actually, let me call you, because imagine getting, especially going through a family issue where you're already probably torn to bits, getting a lengthy email from your solicitor or the other side, uh, and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do? Um,
exactly. And it's that little things like, for example,
mm,
if like it's a Friday afternoon and we've had a letter in and it's not a very nice letter, or
yeah,
it's something that's gonna kick off,
mm,
basically. Sometimes it's putting in a call to the client to say, right, do you know what? We've had this letter in. Do you want me to send it to you or not? Because,
mm, yeah,
what I wouldn't want to do is sort of at 5 o'clock send a letter to someone, a client, and then be like, I'm off now until Monday. And then
that'd
they're
be so
left
cruel. That'd be
with
so
that
cruel.
weight of that all weekend and not
Yeah,
being able to talk to someone, or so it's always being mindful of that and really being aware of the impact of your
mm,
communication on your client, even if it's, as I said, something that you're passing on that's come in, what constantly thinking about that and being aware of how it's gonna land.
mm,
I think that's really, really important. And also in terms of going back to, how we deal with somebody who's really upset as well,
mm,
there's a boundary there because we are lawyers, we are
Mm,
not trained
yeah.
therapists, counselors. So we have to be mindful of that as well, that we are not stepping into that territory because that's not
Mm,
what we're there for.
mm,
And if we feel that actually somebody is really struggling and they do need that support, mental health support or otherwise, it's about us then signposting them to
yeah.
someone and saying, in the nicest possible way,
Mm,
maybe you should get the support, and that's going to help you alongside this process as well. So we have to be mindful of that. And actually, I think there's you know, a myth out there that all of our clients are very teary and crying on us all the time. But to be honest, I don't find that often.
wow, okay. See,
I
maybe
find it's
I'm
very,
too over experienced in what I know. Like everybody's just completely torn
yeah,
around.
no, I don't find that a lot of the time, to be honest with you. Maybe at the very beginning.
Mm,
Um, But that they say, don't they, that when a relationship comes to an end, it's very similar to a grief, and they go
yeah.
through that grief process, and there's different stages,
Mm,
and you can definitely see that
mm,
in your clients because let's face it, look, divorce is not a quick process. It can take a long time.
mm,
Sometimes, very, very difficult cases go on for, 1 or 2 years. And so you can really see the change in the
mm.
clients over that period of time and what, they're moving through different stages at
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah, like I said, maybe I've just heard all the bad stories from solicitors, barristers, and otherwise, and clients themselves, people themselves. So maybe I'm just speaking from all the negative experiences I've been absorbing from people.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to hear sometimes cases are not too awful, and people are not presenting so let's say torn apart. Um, Something we had a conversation about, and I've been itching to get onto this. It's something, and it'd be very nice to go whilst we speak about divorces.
Yeah.
Prenups,
Yeah.
prenups, prenups.
Yeah.
Now, when I thought about prenups, right, and I think I said this to you quite openly. Firstly, I thought they were more of an American thing, first of all. Secondly, I thought prenups were just a contract, like an unbreakable contract, and it was valid and recognized in UK law, which I think you told me it's otherwise is quite difficult to be recognized right now as a kind of be all end all security. Talk to me about prenups because you're the expert in this compared to
Yeah,
me.
so prenups in this country are not absolutely legally
Mm,
binding. So, we don't have any law that says, if a prenup is made, it is absolutely 100% going to be followed. What we have is a framework used by the court on divorce as to all of the factors that they have to take into account when a couple are separating. And one of those factors is any previous agreement. So it is just one of the factors that is looked at. Now, there is guidance out there from case law as to, you know, how a prenup should be done properly. And if it is done properly and all the hallmarks are there, so for example, both parties have had independent legal advice, both parties have given full disclosure of their assets at the
mm,
time of making the agreement, that the agreement has not just been signed the day before the wedding, all right? So it has to be signed, I would say, at least a month before the wedding. If those things are there, then there's more chance of it being upheld. So there's more chance of it having a significant influence on
mm,
a financial settlement if they do go through a divorce. And, I was saying to you previously, prenups are becoming more and more common. And, there's been a lot of consultations about this for years and, groups trying to put changes into the law to make them binding.
mm,
And, we don't know what's going to happen with that yet. I suspect there probably will be a change in the
mm.
future where they do become absolutely binding on people. But for now, we are seeing increasingly more and more prenups being entered into. And, they're not just reserved for the rich and famous, which I think is
Yeah.
again a myth out there that people think that's the case. What I'm seeing a lot of is perhaps people are, hearing horror stories, like you mentioned, about
Yeah.
friends or family members that have had a really terrible divorce, and they've seen what has happened there. So, people are a bit more aware of that and a bit
Mm.
more anxious about going into something, and are more conscious about protecting their assets going forward. What I'm also seeing a lot of is, parents gifting money or wanting
Oh
to
yeah.
give money to their children. We've got the bank of mum and dad, right?
Yep.
Helping, people get on the property ladder. But maybe, now times are changing, and, again, in the Asian community, our generation, not no longer having arranged marriages, meeting the
Yeah.
partners themselves, right? So maybe parents are a bit wary about their children's choice of partners, or again,
Mm.
they've heard horror stories and they're now saying, well, actually, before we give you this money, or before
Mm.
we help you financially, we want to know that this is going to be protected. So they are encouraging their children to enter into these agreements. So we are seeing quite a lot of it, and I would
Mm.
say a lot of it in the Asian community as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it is a good thing
Mm.
in the sense of, it's encouraging conversations
Yep.
about money, lifestyle, how are you going to manage these things, what's important to you,
Yep.
which are conversations which, we might not want to think about, but actually it's quite important that you do. It's also about having those hard conversations now to save potential litigation and
Yeah.
lengthy court proceedings in the future. That's the whole point of it. It's a bit like having an insurance document where,
Yeah.
you hope that the worst doesn't happen and that you don't
Mm.
have to rely on it. But
Mm.
that if it does, you want to be able to go to that and hope that it's going to protect you.
Yeah, and to be fair, in my opinion, I think I said this to you last time. I think to be fair, prenup should be a part of most, if not all, marriages as a precaution. I don't think it shows a sign of distrust. I think if anything, it does the opposite. It shows a sign of trust that you're both willing, assets and property and things, materials aside. That's not important here. The thing is that you two are true to each other, and that's it. Everything else pretty much
Yeah,
there. Just kosher, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, go
And
for it.
as I said before, there's certain things that a prenup, can't account for every possibility,
Mm.
right? Because this is life,
Yeah,
unpredictable things happen.
yeah.
Um, and I think the example I gave to you is, so if you have children and, your child is disabled, severely
Mm.
disabled and has particular needs, and, that wasn't foreseen when you did a prenup, and,
Mm.
so ultimately it's about, if a divorce does happen, the court's priority is making sure that any division and settlement is fair
Mm.
in all the circumstances, and they will look at what is happening at that time. So, you know, a prenup, as I said, is a good thing to have in place. But the reason why it's not absolutely binding is because the court retains that discretion
Yeah.
to depart from it if
Mm.
they think they need to achieve a fair
Yeah,
outcome.
which again I think is it's only prudent, right? Because we're humans, we can't predict things that happen in the future. So,
Yeah.
in all honesty, I think the weight is, of course, I think maybe again, you're the expert at this. I don't know how much weight is actually put on prenups, but on certain elements, yes, if the weight is given, it makes sense. And if on certain elements, like you mentioned, children, you have a child that's disabled, you have a child that you didn't even expect to have. Of course, I think a prenup shouldn't dictate how,
Yeah.
unfairly burdening one. I know burdening is a strong word, but burdening one
Yeah.
person with costs and bills and things,
Yeah.
which can affect off not just one person's quality of life, a subsequent quality people's quality of life, which is I think a very very important point. So yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Um,
And what it can be really helpful for is if you're going into a marriage and you've already got property,
mm,
you can list that, and
mm,
it can be there in black and white that
mm,
this was already property that was acquired before the marriage.
yeah,
And as I said, it's not guaranteed that that's going to be left separate, but it
mm,
certainly helps, because a lot of the time the cases that I'm dealing with, we're looking backwards and trying to find evidence that is
yeah,
no longer there,
mm,
historical bank statements, things like that, and it can be a very difficult process. But if you've already itemize that and it's
Mm.
already clear what was there at the time of marriage, it can be quite helpful in certain situations.
Yeah. Um, I want to talk about, and again, you nicely touched upon this, and I think I want to drag you into it more. You nicely touched upon the idea of, well, prenups will help people have those difficult conversations, the conversations that are not, to be honest, surprisingly to me, had quite often between couples before marriage,
Yeah,
which it absolutely still baffles, startles, and perplexes me completely
yeah,
out of mind because I don't understand how these conversations don't happen. But that's going to sound quite condescending. But the truth of the matter is, these conversations I feel like should be just innately in us, right? This should be
yeah,
something rudimentary to us. But again, like I said, from your background in terms of your family law, my background in terms of law now, it makes sense in my personal experiences. How, and again, we spoke about this last time, South Asian communities, Asian communities
yeah,
in general, very much hidden. They like
yeah,
hiding their vulnerabilities.
yes,
They have to stay quite internalized, and they have to stay as this family unit. Things that
yeah,
are important questions, money, you keep it secret, properties, assets, keep it within the
yeah.
palm of your hands. A past history with that could be important, you keep it separated from whoever you're going to marry. Now, tell me why, and again, from your experience as a legal professional, but potentially if you want to speak from personal experience as a South Asian woman, why is actually so incredibly important that we actually voice these things now out loud, like we are on podcasts, other platforms, just generally, and just actually applying it in your day-to-day life. For example, like going to your parents saying, we need to have these conversations actually, or going to, your future partner or family's partner, your partner's family and say, look, we need to have these conversations, right? Why is it so important?
I think it is because ultimately it's trying to save, like I said,
Mm,
potentially contentious proceedings at a later date. And,
mm,
it's about having the difficult conversations now to hopefully make things easier in the
mm,
future. Um, and I think, yeah, I agree. I think the South Asian community is very notoriously bad at talking about things. And I think,
yeah.
it's down to us as that next generation to, start changing that, leading the way and saying, actually, it's okay to talk about these things and
Mm.
it's healthy to do so.
Okay, pivoting from the legal world now because you are more than the legal world. Tell everybody else about your business life and your entrepreneur kind of career and just you in general. What else do you do? And what other projects and things that you been working on?
Yes, so I am actively involved with the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce. It is the only Asian business chamber in the country, in fact, although our headquarters are in Birmingham, tied to the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce.
Mm.
I am the co-vice president of the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce and have sat on the committee for the last 3 years.
Oh, nice.
And as part of my new role, I think I've been in this position since about March, April, so it's still quite
Still
new.
a newbie.
Still a newbie,
Yeah.
yeah. I lead on our Asian Women in Business network, which we launched last year, which is part of the ABCC as well, and that's to give a platform for the female entrepreneurs that are up and coming
Mm.
and to see how we can help them in that space as well.
Nice. What got you into that? What got you into doing this as well as because being a legal director in itself is probably so time consuming. What got you into
Yeah.
this other side of things? What got you to the flip side of things?
What got me into this, into
Yeah,
the Asian Business Chamber?
yeah.
Well, I mean, it sounds a bit cliche, but like a lot of a lot of Asian people of our generation, I've come from family business,
Mm,
right? So, my mum and dad started out as market traders, literally started out on the outside markets with money belts around the waist, selling ladies' clothes.
mm,
Moved into the indoor markets. Um, we had numerous businesses over the years. We had a cafe,
mm.
we had a car parts business, we had a post office, not all at the same time,
Yep.
but over the years, we were involved in lots of different things. So um, I really saw firsthand, just how difficult it is. And, now sort of immediate family members, my brother, cousins, they're all in business as well. And
Mm,
um, for me, it's really sort of about me now giving back to the community in that way and sort of seeing, what support I can give them through the work with the Asian Business Chamber. Because, I think back to my parents and what they went through and their struggles, and I so wish that they had something
yeah.
there for them to go to have that community, that connection.
Mm,
Um, and so for me, it's all about how the next generation of the Asian entrepreneurs can sort of take the best bits of what our parents did and their work ethic,
mm,
their entrepreneurial spirit, but bring it into modern times and move it forward and see how can we adapt that and how can we now be there as great role models for the
yeah.
future. And part of that is the Asian women, and as
Mm,
I said, that it is now changing. I'm seeing that they're not afraid to step forward,
mm,
to go out on their own, do their own businesses. I see a lot of women that have previously had corporate careers and that have left those to start up their own. And
yeah.
I just absolutely love hearing those stories and seeing that. Um, and so, it's something that I feel really deeply passionate about.
Mm.
And as I said, I sort of see it as part of my duty to help and support this area.
Yeah, and so rightly so, because I was actually having this conversation, funnily enough, about how just in the legal world, as an example, just taking us back into tying this to the legal field, how just recently women have finally found their footing in the legal world alone, and how it's only very recently that we've had over the last, let's say, a few decades, we've had women in the legal field, and it's very similar
Yeah,
in the business world, where yes, women have notoriously been in the business world. Let's not get this mistaken, but
yeah,
not with a presence, force, determination, and actually the reputation that they have now, which is quite nice. And I think something that you've mentioned again, rightly so, and I'm very pleased that you have mentioned this, is that people are just in our generation are just stepping up and saying, well, we
yeah,
don't need a man, we don't need family, we don't need any judgments or decisions made for us. We're just going to start a business. Whereas typically, I'll be honest, and I don't think this is misogynistic to say, it's very common for men to say, actually, we'll do the businesses, don't worry
yeah,
about it. Very much men saying, we'll take the lead, don't worry about it. But
yeah,
it's nice to see it's flipping around and
yeah.
things are twisting.
Yeah, and actually, I think with our parents' generation, what I saw across, lots of family members, was that the women were there
Hmm.
quietly working in the
Yes.
background in the
Yes,
businesses and
absolutely.
actually really working hard. But,
Hmm.
I always refer to it as sort of that quiet strength that was
Yeah.
there. A bit like a bit of a secret weapon, really.
Yes, yes.
For all the, behind every Asian business, I'm telling
Yes.
you, there is a woman there
I was
in
going to
the
say this. It's
background.
the classic saying
Yeah.
is that behind every successful man there's a woman. It's
Yeah.
so true. And I think in
So
Asian
true.
communities it's absolutely true because
Yeah.
my parents have had their own business at least. I can't. I think for 35 years now. They've never actually had an employed life. It's more so just been
Yeah.
a their own business for 35 years. And I kid you not. I obviously they worked hard. And if I always say to my friends and family, if anybody heard their life story, it would be essentially like a whole movie. It would be
Yeah.
insanely emotional, right? But in terms of where they are now, look happily. Like I've always said, my mum has done. Honestly, not that my dad doesn't do work in the businesses or business, but my mum had did the housework, but she also did the business work. And I kid you not,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
I'm like I can barely even think about doing one thing, let alone
I
doing
know
all
that's
of them.
exactly right. But, I don't want women to do it quietly in the background
Yes.
anymore.
Yeah.
I want them to step forward and do
Mm.
it loudly and proudly.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what this is about. And I'm so pleased that, there are more women stepping forward and realizing that they can do it.
Mm.
It's okay for them to do
Yeah.
that. Um, so yeah, that is something that I'm really, really happy to be
I
involved
guess
in.
I guess the other crucial point in this is when once people start doing it and people start seeing it, it's just a motivating factor for somebody else to think, actually, I want to do it and I can do it. It's a motivating factor. Is that,
Absolutely.
do you know that what they call it, like a chain reaction
Yeah,
of one person,
definitely.
another person, another person, another person, and then everyone becomes somebody
Yeah,
else's inspiration, right? And then
yeah,
everybody has another purpose other than elevating themselves, they're elevating somebody else and something else,
yeah.
which
I
is,
mean, yeah, a lot of our Asian Business Chamber events, I've seen a lot of women that have maybe brought their daughter along or their
mm,
niece or a young family member. And I absolutely love that because
mm,
it's like you said, it's sort of bringing the next generation along and letting them see that, oh, there's a whole other world out there for you if that
yeah,
is something that you want to do.
mm,
And, getting them used to sort of networking, talking to different people. And I think these are skills that perhaps we didn't have the benefit of
yes.
learning or understand what was out there. And I think again that's something that's really important, and that I'm a huge advocate of. And it can help build confidence as well, build contacts, all
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So that is something that I am seeing a lot of as well.
Yeah, which is again great. It's actually, to be fair, it's fantastic to actually have people in that field. I remember one of my podcast guests actually said to me, "It's so nice seeing a South Asian man doing a podcast, for example." Which at
Yeah,
first, when the comment was made, I was like, "This makes no sense." I just okay, but obviously, the more I think about it, it's this expectation that there's not a lot of South Asian people in general that do stuff like this, and again, it's something we touched on last time, kind of touched upon today as well. It's that we're very secretive as
yeah,
as a I think as a culture, and we're just very
yeah,
secretive in terms of we don't like our is that I think it's the idea of don't tell somebody else because they'll either spite it, betray it, envy it,
yeah, that's
or
right.
jinx it, right? It's that kind of idea. In our language, we call it nazar, right? It's the evil eye.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it's very, very common. And plus, it's the idea of you don't trust anybody else unless they're family, unless they're blood. But it's so nice finally seeing people like yourself getting out there and someone of your stature as well, by the way. So, and that's something I very, very admire because something that I found is, and actually I found this very much in the legal world. So when I first entered the legal world, do you know the advice I was given? And I kid you not, this was given by barristers. Solicitor says, um, and anyone in the legal world, all of them said to me, it's the worst field to be in because nobody helps each other out in the legal world. Everybody's very much a competitor. They said you're coming from a
mm,
healthcare world where everyone is supportive to a legal world where everyone is contentious. Nobody will help you out. Nobody will pull favors. No one will give you advice. I've completely found the last 2 years the complete opposite. It's
yeah. I was
actually the
gonna
legal
say I
professionals
don't find that.
who have
Yeah,
been the most helpful people on the planet
yeah,
to me. And this is after 5 years in the healthcare field. And
yeah.
I kid you not, there's not as many helpful people in the healthcare field I found as there are in the legal field. So it's so nice,
Mm,
especially people of your stature. So even my previous guests I've had on, I've said the same thing. It's so lovely to see people that are doing stuff like this. And again, I think I said to you, South Asian woman, it's beautiful to see finally you're doing the legal side, but you're extending yourself a lot amongst that and beyond that into the business world. So
yeah,
I'm going to
definitely.
quickly switch this up, and I don't know if I made you sweat enough in this podcast episode, but I'm going to try to sweat now. Um, we'll go through our 5 questions. Everybody go through
Okay,
it. We're not going to be mean and punish you only, but everyone goes
okay.
through it. Um,
The stage is set, the spotlight is on. This is Doses of Authenticity, where the real stories unfold, every answer reveals a new layer, and the true self shines. Let the questioning begin.
what is your number one life philosophy?
I think it is don't be afraid to make mistakes.
How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as somebody who has shown that, as a South Asian woman, we can do anything that we want if we put our minds to it.
One change you would make to society?
There is a lot of judgment on women, Asian women, particularly around their marital status,
Oh, yes.
all that sort of thing. So I think for me, um, it really bothers me that that is still there.
The best advice you have ever been given.
Just to get the most out of every role that you're in, wherever you work, whatever position you're in, just really, get as much out of it as possible.
What makes you authentic and unique?
One of the things that I always strive to do is lead with empathy and understanding.
Perfect. So, unfortunately, to be honest, because this was a really nice podcast episode, we've actually touched upon, I think, many conversations that I previously had mentioned that uh, I guess people in the legal world particularly tend to avoid. um, I don't know why. I don't know if it's just protect themselves. I don't know if it's uncomfortable. I don't know if they just don't know the answers. So, as legal professionals do, they tend to avoid it. But it's been lovely to actually have those conversations
Yeah.
and bring them to the light.
Yeah, I mean, people can get hold of me on social media such as LinkedIn or contact me by email. Always happy to have an initial conversation. And, like I was saying earlier, I think knowledge is power.
Mm,
And, it's about sort of, if you or somebody else is going through difficult time, it's, arming yourself with that knowledge to make those informed decisions.
yeah.
And that's what I would always say is, just get advice as early as possible. And yeah, that's it.
Amazing. Again, thank you so much. Again, guys,
Thank you.
that's Monica. She's been the most wonderful, one of the most wonderful people I've ever spoken to, in the legal world. Any advice, any guidance you might need, feel free to email her. Details will be in the descriptions as well.